Hello, friends of the bridegroom. Welcome to the Hope's Garden, The Bridegroom Speaks podcast. Today's episode is another segment from the new Hope's Garden Song of Songs study, From Exile to Eschaton. In this episode, we ponder salvation history as a love story, as God as the divine bridegroom who ceaselessly pursues and woos and rescues his inconstant, unfaithful bride. I spoke a little bit about the Song of Songs being the holy of holies of Scripture, and that God has veiled the meaning of his divine love song in poetic language and imagery and allegory, right? And so I want to begin today by proposing a few ideas that I've had of why this is so, and begin to ponder what is required of those of us who pray and wish for the veil to be lifted so that we too can become singers of the Song of Songs. So, and that took me back to this overarching theme of from exile to eschaton, right? That what we need to remember as we journey through this life is that we're part of the story of God's people, that we are part of the story of salvation. And so we need to be reminded, we need to remember, where did our story begin? And what do we know about where the story ends? Because we do know some things about where we're going, where we hope to go, right? And so as I was praying about that last night and thinking about it, a couple of different analogies came to my mind. One was that for each one of us, it's as though our personal story of salvation, our personal love story with the divine bridegroom is one of those books that my kids used to love when they were like 10 years old. Those beginner chapter books where the reader gets to choose what the character is going to do next, right? So if you want the character to open that door, turn to page 15. If you want the character to walk past that door and take the other path, turn to page 18, right? And then the story changes. And so this is, to me, was an analogy of our personal life's journey with bridegroom, that we have this vision. He's given us a vision of where we're going, of the eschaton, right? Of heaven, the heavenly wedding feast. But whether or not we arrive there is really is up to us and the choices that we make along this journey. And so at every moment, we have free will. We have options. We have choices in front of us. And where we go, where we end up, depends on the choices we make along the way. Does that make sense? So the story is not exactly the same for every one of us. But the overarching, the common plot, I would say, the plot line of the story of salvation, of every soul's story, what is similar, what is the same, is the character of the divine bridegroom. And so the plot line of every soul's story is that we are living out a divine romance. That God is continuously, relentlessly pursuing and wooing and courting every one of us. And so then I began to think about the plot of all of our favorite fairy tales and courtly love stories. And I thought how similar it is to the divine love story. And I thought what popped into my mind also was a quote that I read from Tolkien. I think it was Tolkien, and in a letter that he wrote to his daughter after she had grown up and said she didn't have need of fairy tales anymore. And he told her that one day she would be old enough that she would love fairy tales again, that she would be ready to reread them. And it just reminded me of what we talk about, how the bride has to go through this journey of turning away from the divine bridegroom and exploring other options, right? Going down those other paths until finally she realizes, oh no, wait, I do need God now, now and immediately, and no one else will satisfy me. And I thought this is, if we look at this divine love story as a fairy tale, that it's the story of a king and a bridegroom, right? The divine prince who is faithfully and ardently pursuing and courting his chosen ones, his beloved. And what do we know about the beloved? She's inconstant. She's unfaithful. She wanders off. She gets into danger again and again and again. And just like the knight in shining armor in a fairy tale, the divine bridegroom and king does not give up again and again. Every time she gets herself into danger, he comes again to rescue her. He never stops pursuing. He never stops loving. And this goes on throughout all of Scripture. We see it again and again. The bride wanders off. She ends up in exile. She ends up slave to her enemies, to her persecutors. And again, the divine bridegroom comes and he saves her. And he vanquishes her enemies and he defeats the evil. And again, he welcomes her back into the nuptial covenant with himself. The divine king and bridegroom who continually offers his bride, his promised bride, a garden of delights, a paradise, right? And the bride, the soul, his chosen ones, seem to continually choose to turn away from him, because what do we tend to gravitate towards? That which is going to give us immediate gratification. We would prefer temporary happiness over long suffering and patience, right? We want what's going to make us feel good now. And our divine bridegroom, the happiness that he's offering us is not always something that's tangible in this moment. We have to wait and we have to hope and long for it. That's where that desire comes in, right? But as I thought about how this story, this plot that has repeated throughout history, throughout the scriptures for centuries, but then something different happened, right? The divine bridegroom did something that no one had expected. No one had even imagined, except I would propose perhaps the writer of the Song of Songs at least had a desire for it. Even if the poet didn't know it was within the realm of possibility, the writer desired it. God himself became human. God himself, the lover, became one just like the beloved, so that his love could be visible, tangible, knowable. And in the Song of Songs, the poet says, "Ah, why are you not my brother, nursed at my mother's breast? Ah, why are you not my brother?" A longing for the incarnation, a longing for the king and divine bridegroom to be one like herself, that she might see him, that this love that she heard of, that she experienced in veiled ways, could be visible that she would know it without a doubt. And God responded to that longing. And Jesus, God himself, the second person of the Holy Trinity, left the complete joy and fulfillment of the Trinity, of that union and communion of complete self-giving love, to enter into the womb of the Blessed Virgin Mary and take on flesh and blood, to suffer, to prove his love. What a move of wooing and pursuing his beloved. There is no bridegroom comparable to Jesus. What he will not do to prove his love to his promised brides.